Hello. If you're able to, please close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Relax your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Take another deep breath in. And another breath out. You can open your eyes now. My name is David, and welcome to Mindful Moments. How are you today? I hope you're well. I am very well, and I am very excited because I finally get to talk about something I've wanted to talk about for a very, very long time. I have just written my very first book. It comes out officially on the 2nd of January, 2025. And this has been a very long time in the making. I've been writing this book for over a year. And during that time, I wasn't able to talk about it at all. Now, if you've watched my short form content before, if you've seen my content before, you'll know that by now, and especially in the last couple of years, I've done lots of different types of content. But in the last couple of years, the overwhelming majority of my content has been joyful poetry and mindful moments. So when I post my posts and when I do my poetry, I get a lot of comments asking me or saying to me, you should write a book, you should write a children's book, you should write a book of poetry. Would you ever consider writing a book? Maybe you should write a book. Lots of comments basically asking me to write a book. And the whole time I've had to be very tight-lipped and be very coy about writing a book, knowing the whole time I was writing this book. I've been writing this book and I've had to keep it to myself. Obviously, the closest people to me in real life knew that I was writing a book. But to the vast majority of people, I've had to be quiet. And that's very hard for me because I like to talk, clearly. My book, I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about the structure of my book, why I wrote it, the process of putting a book proposal together, the process of pitching to publishers, the process of writing itself, the process of even marketing the book and making content to market the book. I want to talk about everything. And as I said, I've been writing the book for over a year. I was writing the book for over a year. And I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And now I finally can. So let's talk about it. My book is called Frequently Happy, 52 Mindful Moments to Bring Hope and Joy. And the structure of the book is 52 chapters, which follow the seasons: winter, spring, summer, autumn. And each chapter has a poem, a reflection, much like what I'm doing now, but in written form, and a journal prompt with space for the reader to write their own thoughts. As I said, it follows the seasons, but it doesn't necessarily have to be read one chapter a week. That's just the structure of it. You can read it however you want. When you get it, it's your book. You can do what you want with it. I wrote it for you. And writing this book has been one of the singular best experiences of my entire life. It feels like everything I've done content-wise over the many years I've been creating content. I would say I started creating content in earnest when I was 17 or 18. That's when I first started to write with the intention of putting things out there and showing people things. So I started to write songs and poetry and lyrics and stuff like that. I've been doing that actually. I say I started when I was 17 in terms of showing people what I was doing, but I've always had a love and interest for it. I used to get one of the few negative comments I used to get at parents' evenings where I'd always have my own notebook that I'd be writing in when lessons were going on, because I've just always wanted to jot down my own thoughts. And if I have a good creative thought, I've always wanted to write it down and write lyrics and thoughts and stuff like that. But yes, so essentially, I've been creating all types of content to show people from when I was 17. I'm 26 now. So that's a good amount of time. And obviously the last 3 years, I've been a full-time content creator. So I've been able to focus all my energy and attention on creating, which has been absolutely incredible. And for this book to be structured like it is, to have poetry, reflections, and journal prompts, is something that feels really special to me. That feels really unique to me because it's a combination of everything I create and everything I care about so much. And I'm just so grateful to have written it and to even be in this position. Usually it takes me a long time after finishing something to feel any sense of accomplishment, but I promise you, when I put that last full stop down, I felt it straight away. I felt it straight away. I felt so happy and so proud and so grateful to have done this. And yeah, I mean, I think I should start from, in terms of the journey of this book specifically, I should probably start from how the book deal came to be. As I said, on short form platforms, if you don't follow me, I create or write a lot of joyful poetry. Usually I don't really write my poems down. I'll just be in a good moment, feel something lovely, and just recite a poem about it and then post it. One of those poems was sent to me by a publisher, or through one of those poems, I was approached by a publisher who asked if I'd ever thought about writing a book. Now, because I create loads of different types of content, I've kind of always got, imagine a big stove with several pots cooking at the same time. That's how I think of my creativity in my brain. Like I've always got something going on in every direction and everywhere. So as I was asked, have you ever thought about writing a book? I had loads of ideas. I had loads of things that I could kind of think of. And I was approached through the poetry route. So I put together a book proposal. And the book proposal I put together was actually for the book I've written. It was Mindful Moments, Frequently Happy. I called it Frequently Happy, Mindful Moments to bring, at first, joy and calm, which then became hope and joy. I pitched that proposal to the original publisher who approached me. But then in the publishing world, the way things kind of work is that once you have a good proposal, you can pitch it to multiple publishers if you feel. And I did. I talked to multiple publishers because the publishing relationship is an important one in content creation, which has obviously been my main job for the last 3 years. Things feel a little more short term, if that makes sense. It's almost, I'll work with a brand, but it'll pretty much be on a one-off basis at a time. And then you build a relationship over time. Whereas signing a publishing deal, you establish a point. At the point of signing, you establish a long-term relationship. We're going to be working on this project at least for a while. Eventually, the publisher I went with was my absolute dream publisher, which is Penguin Random House, which is, I can't even tell you how that feels. I am an avid reader, as you are well aware. Penguin Random House have been a part of my entire life. Since I was a child, Penguin Random House has been part of my life. All the books I read when I was a kid, most of the books I finished now, there's a penguin at the end of it. So to be part of the Penguin family, to be a Penguin Random House, a Penguin Random House author feels extremely surreal, even now. And the most lovely thing about it is how genuinely lovely everybody at Penguin is. Now, I have to really underline that everybody I've come across in publishing at Penguin and elsewhere has been super lovely. I feel like people who love books and choose to work with books, that speaks to a certain type of character, you know, not being biased, but I feel like all the people I've come across who work in publishing have been really lovely. All the other publishers I talked to were very nice and lovely and respectful. The thing that tipped the balance with Penguin is when I talked to my now editor, Amanda, who is incredible at her job, so intelligent, so kind, so patient. But the very first conversation we had, she said, in complete earnest, I see this very much as the first of many projects for you. And that was something that really filled me with excitement, because I very much feel like this is my first book. It is a huge deal. I am not doing the thing that I sometimes do where I start thinking about what's next as soon as one thing is accomplished. I am very, very focused on this book and this book being everything that it is, and sitting on the joy and achievement of having completed this book for a while. I have ideas for my next things, but those can wait until this moment is over. I'm very much in this moment. I'm embracing this moment. But Amanda said to me, I see this very much as the first of many things. And that level of belief in me really meant a huge amount, a really, really huge amount. And I made the absolute correct decision. It's been a joy to work on this book and a joy to work with the team at Penguin, everyone in the team at Penguin, this whole time. So that was one of the big things. Finding the right publisher and the right home for writing this book was a big deal. And as I said, the deal came to me. Initially, I was approached by a publisher, but I think the thing that I wanted to underline and make clear of this part, especially for anyone who's thinking of publishing something themselves or approaching publishers, etc., is that I was obviously helped by the fact I had my social media platforms already. That's far from a necessity. Far from a necessity. I was just very fortunate to have that already. But on top of that, my proposal was really tight and it was a very good proposal. It was very well thought through. This podcast used to be 1-minute videos every other week on Instagram for almost a year. And before that, when I was in university, I actually used to write a blog every week, which I used to write a blog every single week. Every Friday, I used to release a blog post. You're seeing a theme in how I like to do things. But I used to write a blog post every single Friday. Used to be about 20 people who would read it, most of them friends and family, but I'd release a blog every Friday. And I did that for over 2 years. I think I made it to 110 weeks, which is, over 2 years. So the kind of the structure and the thought process of writing this had been in place for a long time. I'd long been thinking about doing things like this. So when it came to the point of approaching publishers, I was in a really strong position in terms of pitching myself and pitching what I was going to do, because I was so practiced at the things I'd been doing. And I think that really, really helped a lot in terms of, securing the publishing deal and also finding the right publisher for me, because it's so much easier to sell your vision to somebody when you're clear on what that vision is yourself. Publishing deal was secured. Officially secured October last year, which then meant starting to write the book. As I said, I had a very solid proposal, and many of the chapters in the proposal actually made it into the final book. And then I had to write the rest of it. At first, I started to approach writing this book like you'd approach work, like I approach a job. As I said, I'm a full-time creator, but the way my personality works, I like to work to a structure. I tend to work 9 to 6 because that's when most other people work anyway. That's when my friends are working. That's when I'm working on brand campaigns, etc. That's when other people are working. So I tend to work to that kind of structure. But I very quickly realized that writing wasn't going to work like that at all. Because first of all, you're not always inspired between the hours of 9 to 6. It'll be 9 p.m. and I have a great idea. And I wasn't exactly going to think or say, it's 9 p.m. I'll wait till tomorrow. If I had a good idea for a chapter, I wanted to get it down before the idea left me. And this was something that really interfered with my work-life balance. And really, as I said in episode 41, I've had a few health issues in the last year as well. And it's no coincidence that it came during this time when I was working very intensely on this and found it very hard to set boundaries for myself. I eventually, when I found a healthy balance and found a healthy way to work, would say that I would write for 4 hours a day. And then if I wanted to go back to writing, I would edit rather than write. I feel like when you're trying to come up with good ideas and when you're trying to write, unfortunately, your brain only stays fresh for so long. When I was writing for a long time, say I'd do a 10-hour day and I would sit and say I'm writing for 10 hours. Most of what I would write in that day didn't compare to what I would come up with if I wrote for 4 hours on a day when I felt really good and then let myself rest. And I very quickly realized that I needed to give myself the time to write this book. And that was another thing. The process of writing a book is very different to any kind of creation I've done before. I even did English at university. So you'd think I'd be used to writing essays and all that kind of stuff. But again, writing creatively, even though my book is nonfiction, writing creatively comes from a very different place than analysis and critical analysis. So having to come up with things myself took, a different level of effort and came from a different part of my brain, a part of my brain that wasn't very well developed because I've never done anything like this before. And again, that is where the editing process and having an editor came in so wonderfully. Every word in this book is mine. I didn't have a ghostwriter. I didn't have anyone helping me write it. But in the process of writing any book, you have an editor. And that's why, again, going with the right publisher was so important, because when I met and talked to Amanda, my editor, I knew that I had someone who understood what I was trying to do, who really cared about the book as much as I did and cared about the concept of the book as much as I did. And when it came to the editing process, essentially I would get deadlines and say, okay, let's try and have this amount of chapters done by this time. I'd give those chapters in. Amanda would go through, point things out, make her edits, give it back to me. I'd work on those chapters and write new chapters. Edits are also they're not compulsory. I think, again, going through school, doing English and French at university, being very used to writing essays, I'm very used to, if someone suggests something, that means you have to do it. Whereas for this, it was constantly emphasized that this is your book. The way that I, your editor, am reading this is their suggestions. This is how I'm seeing it. But equally, what I say has way less importance than what you feel. If you feel like you want this to stay like this or you want this to be like this, that's how it stays. That's how you leave it. So I felt very relaxed in making this book my own. Equally, I am very much a person who, if someone has a level of expertise in something I'm not experienced in, I will listen to them because that's the same thing to do. And Amanda is fantastic at her job. When you write so much, I think my book is about 30,000 words long, which sounds intimidating. I promise it's not. But it's about 30,000 words long. And when you write that much and it all comes from your head, there are always going to be things that you don't see. There were loads of chapters, for example, where I wouldn't realize that I'd repeat a word over and over and over and over again. I think the chapter about discipline, the word discipline was in the chapter about 55 times, which is extremely unnecessary. But at the time of writing it, I couldn't really tell. And then when someone else looks over it and gives it back to you and points it out, that's when you can see, okay, I need to change this. And that is one of the most amazing things I've got out of this process. Working collaboratively on something that's yours makes it better. Sometimes I can be very reluctant to accept help or ask for help on the things that I do just because I'm very precious about my creative vision, as a lot of creative people are. I've also been really blessed enough to see some success in my creativity, which can make you a lot more, arrogant is a strong word, but more, I guess the word I'm looking for is picky and very reluctant to accept external voices on what you're doing. But we all always need external perspective to make us better. And my loyalty in this was to the book above all else. I didn't want it to be the case that when it came to telling people I've written a book, telling people to buy this book, I don't believe in what I'm telling people to buy. Of course not. I wanted it to be the same as this podcast, the same as my content. I want to provide value. I want you to go away after having consumed it feeling better than before. And in order to do that, I knew I needed the help that was around me, which is why I'm so grateful for Amanda. I'm so grateful for everybody at Penguin Random House, everybody on the editing team who really helped me with this book and helped with the structure. The hardest time to write this book came during this year. So I had my final manuscript done in February. I had my final manuscript done in February and I gave it in to Amanda, went away on a holiday, proposed, got engaged, then had my health issues, had a shoulder operation, had recovery from that shoulder operation, had other things to deal with, and then had to get back to finishing this book. And the notes I got back on my final manuscript were extensive. It was a lot of work to do. And a lot of the notes centered around the fact that a lot of the chapters had lost their joy. And as I said, the title of my book is Frequently Happy, 52 Mindful Moments to Bring Hope and Joy. The whole point is to bring hope and joy. One of the reasons it was so important to me to write a book, which is actually the same reason it was important to me to start this podcast, is because my content is overwhelmingly positive. Like I try to, as I said, add value to people's lives, and I want people to go away feeling better than they came. One of the things I'm very keen to do when I do that is not to make it seem like I'm just flippantly happy because I don't pay attention to anything and I ignore all bad things. I don't ever want to be or present toxic positivity where it's like, oh, just ignore everything that's bad. Life is just great. You're not trying hard enough. Never. I never want that to be the case. One of the things that meant for this book is that when I was writing it and I was writing chapters that dealt with heavier topics or things that are more difficult about life, it was really hard to end those chapters in a positive place, especially when in my own life, I wasn't feeling like I was in a very positive place. Looking back over the final manuscript that I wrote before the actual finished version of the book, I can absolutely see how I was struggling a lot more than I realized, even at the time of writing, before I had the major health issues and I had my injury and I had my surgery. I was already kind of exhausted and burnt out, and it's reflected in the writing. So when I got this manuscript back for my final major round of edits, I was not in a good place. I was in a lot of pain daily with my shoulder. I was really struggling. I felt very shaken. I really felt like I was trying to rebuild myself physically and mentally. And I had this huge project to finish. And that was the first time I started to doubt how good I can make this. I wasn't expecting it, but finishing the book in that mental space was incredibly cathartic and incredibly healing. I went from really doubting that I'd be able to do it to believing in what I was doing more than ever. As I've said, my stance of contentment and finding the joys, the small joys in life, comes from a perspective of examining everything that life has to offer and choosing to try and see the positive in everything that goes on, rather than pretending the negative doesn't exist in order to feel positive. And I was in a position where in real life, I had to make sure I was doing that. And I had to make sure that that was reflected in the book as well. Essentially, I was really forced to practice what I preached and finish this book at the same time. And doing that, I worked myself into a much better mental space just by finishing the book. It got to the point where, as I was finishing the final chapters and doing my reviews and my reading, I was so happy with what I'd written. I was so proud of myself. And I felt so grateful for the fact that I was in a position where, when I was going through my health stuff, Penguin were amazing. My management were amazing. My family were amazing. My friends were amazing. My fiance was amazing. And when you have a support network like that, the least you owe is to put into yourself the effort that everyone else is putting into you. And I feel like the love and care that I felt was being poured into me was then transferred directly into the pages of this book. And it's something that I think you'll really be able to feel when you read it. You'll really be able to understand how I can come to the conclusions I do and how I can look at life the way I look at it when you read the words I write and you know the love that that came from. So essentially, finished the book feeling very happy, feeling very, very happy, very proud and very joyful because, as I said, I wanted to do it justice and I wanted it to be something that I was proud to tell people I've written, that I was happy to tell people to buy and to read because I knew it would have the impact I wanted it to have. And I do truly believe that. I really believe that anyone who enjoys my content, even people who don't know who I am, can read the words that I've written and feel the things that I want them to feel. And it feels really lovely. It really does. I think one of the biggest things I got from this journey as well is that, as I said, social media can feel very short term. It can feel very, very quick. It feels like a lot of the time, even though I know it's my anxiety speaking rather than the truth, a lot of the time it feels like you're only as good as your last video and you're only as valuable as the metrics of the last things that you've posted. Whereas with this, Penguin very early on said, we are invested in this book and in you as an author, long term. And this is the first long-term thing I've had happen to me since being a full-time creator. One of the biggest anxieties of leaving a full-time job to create full-time was, this feels like it can fall apart at any moment. So to just have a sense of long-term security, it's just really wonderful. It feels amazing, I'll be honest. And to know that a door is open for me to not only write this book, but to continue writing, which I love, by the way. I think the biggest thing I've discovered is that I love writing. There's nothing that makes me happier than writing. In fact, I think if you consume any of my content, it's very clear that everything I do starts with words. Everything I do is centered around words. I feel like I'm living my purpose and doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And that feeling is just beyond compare. I feel so grateful every day that I'm getting to do the things I'm getting to do. And I feel so excited for what else I have to do, whilst, of course, embracing the moment. But yeah, it feels really wonderful to feel that there's a long-term future in this and to feel that, yeah, this is a real solid existing book and project that exists and that is real and that is going to be in print and that people are going to read and actually have. As you can imagine, my people are so proud of me. My mom is so proud of me. My family are also proud of me. My friends, everybody is so proud of me. And it took me a while to feel that pride in myself because at first, when I was in a much more, I wouldn't say negative, but just when the book deal was actually signed, I thought way more about the actual work of writing the book than I did about the fact that it was a real achievement for me to be in this position at all. But having finished the book, I feel like all those feelings are now catching up to me. This was a real achievement for me. I'll be so honest. It was a real achievement for me. If I told myself as a child that this is what I'm doing now, you'd be so proud of me. So that's something that I really need to acknowledge. And I am acknowledging. I'm very, very happy and very grateful. The last thing that I want to say is that obviously I'm in a position where I got to write this book at a time where I was finally creating full time. But this didn't come out of nowhere and didn't start from nothing. As I said, years and years and years of work at different things, at different types of content, at trying out different ideas, things that now I'd call, no, actually, no, I would never call anything embarrassing. I would never call an attempt to create and show your creations to people embarrassing. It never is. Even if something isn't at a certain level of quality yet, all you can do sometimes to improve is to show what you've done, is to show what you've created, get the feedback, see how it's received, and go back to work. And for more of my life than not, I have done my creative things whilst working at other stuff that wasn't creative and that I didn't necessarily enjoy and didn't want to do forever. One of the biggest mistakes we can make as creatives is feeling like if we don't get to do our creative thing full time, it's not legitimate and it doesn't count and it's not really real. That's one of the biggest mistakes we can make, because ultimately, especially when we start, especially at the beginning of anyone's journey, the vast, vast, vast majority of people have to do something that's not creative to earn money, to live, to survive, alongside the creative thing that they do. If that were to mean that what you create is invalid, so much of the beautiful art that we care about and love would be invalid. And of course, it's not. Anything you create at any time is valid and worthy and has value and will contribute to what you create later. It will. It just will. It does. There were sentences I was writing, things that I was writing in this book, and I'd realized this thought came from years ago, and I put it out in a different way. I might have written it as a song lyric, or I might have used it in a video, but now it's part of this book, and this is where it belonged the whole time. I just had to try those other things to know it belonged here. And I also want to encourage anyone who feels like their creativity isn't legitimate because they aren't getting to do it full time, or feels like the life they're living isn't worthy of their creativity. I really want to encourage everybody to never be contemptuous of your circumstances. There were times where I was working jobs that I really hated doing, and I was trying to create on the side. Even in those jobs I didn't like doing, there were funny stories. There were good days at work. There were days where I thought I didn't have anything left in me and came home and managed to squeeze out the tiniest job of creativity that turned into something bigger. There were friends, there were beautiful relationships I made in jobs that I didn't like with people who are wonderful, who I'm still friends with now. There is joy to be found at any time in life, in anything that we're doing. And when we're on a journey to what we consider to be success, or what we would consider to be success, the point of achievement is much shorter than the journey we take to get there. So we have to find the joy in the journey, in the process. We have to find the joy in getting there. Because if we don't, we'll have spent too much time not enjoying the life that we have. And then when we get the success, even then, it won't ring as true or feel as good as it should, because we didn't appreciate enough of what was going on at the time. So it's really important. It's really important that we're never contemptuous of our circumstances, that we give validity and legitimacy to the things we create, even when our life circumstances aren't exactly as we'd like them to be. And that above all, we continue to believe in ourselves and we continue to create, because that's the only way we get here. I am well aware, far too aware, that being good at something, caring about it and working hard at it are not the only prerequisites to success, because if they were, far more people would have what they deserve. Everybody at some point needs circumstances outside their control to go their way to find success. And I'm very, very, very grateful, more grateful than I could even express, that I'm in a position at this moment where those things have gone in my favor and I've been able to write this book and I'm able to share it with people. I never take it for granted. I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for everybody who's ever poured a word of success, who's ever clicked on anything that I've made, anyone who's ever consumed anything I've created, anybody who's ever contributed to me being where I am. And I can only hope to carry it and value and cherish that responsibility with the grace and humility that it deserves, because I'm so aware that many people could be here and I happen to be here. And I'm always going to work to be worthy of that and to be worthy of the things that have been done for me. I'm really grateful. So yeah, I wrote my first book. And if you're listening to this, you will love this book. I think that's It's a guarantee I can make. If you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to this podcast, you will love this book. I love this book. And I'm very happy. I'm really, really happy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Whatever you're doing this week, I hope you have a wonderful one.